I'm just going to talk about how ill health and serendipity have led to a 40-year career that I didn't know I wanted to have, but is absolutely fabulously perfect. So when I was a small child, I grew up on a farm and I was quite unwell. So at one point in primary school, I had a year off school and I did correspondence school. And I think in many ways that was incredibly beneficial to me, because it was an opportunity to develop my imagination. So I lived in country Victoria and we didn't have that many books, but my mother used to subscribe to the Reader's Digest books. Probably a lot of you remember those. And we used to have small books about different countries, and you get the stickers on one lot and you have this little book and you go through and you stick the stickers in. Well, I had a cupboard in my bedroom, a big cupboard, and I used to sit in the cupboard on a chair with the door open and stick the little stickers in and imagine that I was in all these different places in the world. And I think that was really incredibly useful, very helpful, to just really be able to go into a complete world of my own and really imagine everything that I wanted to have. After high school, I had to go to Melbourne to go to tertiary school, and I went somewhere, got a scholarship somewhere which I didn't like. I left it. I went to Swinburne, with then Swinburne Institute. They had a film and television school, and they had just started some new programs. So I arrived a little bit late because I'd left this other place that I didn't fancy, and they said, well, yes, you can come in here, but you have to say for the first year that you're going to do a language. So you can choose between Greek, Italian, French or Japanese. And I thought, well, I had a Japanese pen friend, so I'll go for Japanese, just for a year. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. So it was just a new program, and there was only about 6 students in my year. And it was total immersion in Japanese, from the language to all aspects of culture. We used to go to the Japanese lecturer's house and have food and enjoy the music, and it really was, it was a wonderful experience. And then when I got to 3rd year, the Japanese lecturer said, well, you know, if you're going to learn to speak Japanese, you have to go to Japan. Sure, that sounds like an adventure. He said, you won't need much money. What we'll do, there was 3 of us from across the years, we'll put your pictures in the national newspaper and we'll get some places for you to stay. So that's what they did, and I got 4 families in Kyoto. Very lucky me. So off I went, and the first family that I came to stay with was a very traditional Japanese family. There was 2 girls that went to school and spoke English, but the mother spoke, and the mother and father, absolutely no English at all, so I had to rely on my Japanese, and she was very, very traditional. We went to the market together, we cooked, we did whatever you do in a Japanese house. I used to run down the, I was honoured guest, so I was up on the 2nd floor. Everyone else had their futons on the floor and packed them in the cupboard, but I actually had something that stayed there for me to sleep on. And I used to have to run down and make sure that I got the rice and pickles that Dad was having. Anyway, one day I was sitting on the tatami floor with the mother, and she was hand sewing her kimono, and she pulled out this piece of fabric, and she told me that she'd done this at this particular place, and would I like to go there? So I thought, yes, I would. So we went to, what was it, actually a kimono factory. And we stepped into this place, and the first floor of the building was just rolls and rolls of the most exquisite fabric. And that what they did there was the two types of dyeing. It was all hand dyed. It was all Zome, which is a technique that relies on the colours being true to nature. And the other was a stenciling technique. So when I saw this fabric, I had no art background, but I saw this fabric and I thought, it was like an epiphany. If I could do this, if I could make fabric as beautiful as this, it's what I would want to do for my whole life. I just was so entranced. So within this building, there was a second floor where you had every aspect of the kimono making laid out. There was the designers, and then there was the applying of the resist, and the painting, and the embellishing, and the steaming, and down below there was a river running through the building. It was tiled, and it was for washing the fabric after it had been dyed and steamed to get the excess dye off. And below that was a basement where you could take classes. And because I could speak Japanese, they said I could go there. So I went down into the basement, and I brought along a couple of things just to explain it a little bit better. There was three distinct parts, as I said, to the technique that I was learning. There was the designers. So we weren't allowed to actually design anything. And there was the painters and the resist putter-oners, and then there was the embellishers. So obviously I didn't get to do any designing then. I did inquire at the end of my time in Japan if I could be apprenticed, and they said, well, yes, it's 6 years for the design part, it's 6 years for the dyeing, and it's 6 years for the finishing. So, you know, all up 18 years, I thought, perhaps not. Anyway, so the first part of the making of the kimono was the designing, and a lot of the designers, they would simply have out the white silk, and then using a brush like this is my brush that I still use for putting on designs, and then you would use the sap of a blue flower that grew just outside Kyoto. There was fields of this beautiful flower, and the sap you'd put the design on at the very beginning, and then it wouldn't disappear until the whole fabric was washed and steamed. And then the next part was the application of the resist, which was rice paste, and it was, I brought in a bit of paper that's in a bit better condition. We used to put the rice paste in a little funnel, which is made from mulberry paper soaked in persimmon juice, and then you fitted a little nozzle on there, put your paste in, rolled it up and squeezed it out like this, and it made the most incredibly fine lines, so you could get really detailed pieces. And then probably after that you put on the background, so using these big brushes. So with all these brushes you soak them in water for 30 minutes or so that the fibres plump up and stay firm in the brush. These are dried out a bit. They're all hand stitched, and these brushes are over 40 years old. They're the original brushes that I bought from Japan. And then for applying the colours, we again used hand-stitched brushes, these lovely little ones. Some of these are newer, I've had a few extras. And the silk was stretched on canes which had a metal prong on the ends. So, excuse me, for small pieces you'd have them all pronged, about 8 of them in, so that you could tie them together at the back and hold them in one hand like this, and so you could do your work with the other. And when you were doing longer pieces, they were on a sort of a roller, same canes holding it all firm, and you sat on the floor on your knees and pulled the fabric along and do all these procedures. Anyway, the colours were made from small or powdered dyes, and we used to have little tiny white ceramic plates which we mixed our colours in, and because the technique that I was learning was the true to nature, you had to mix and mix and mix to get exactly the right colour. And I spent 7 months just mixing colours, so 7 months just, you know, trying to get it right. So you can understand, colour is really important to me these days. So besides that, I didn't actually stay with any other families after the first family because there was so much to do in Japan, so many things to see. But one of the other families that I had was a couple, and one was a roketsuzome person, so a wax dyeing person. So, and her husband was a painter. So I spent a lot of time with her as well. So I had a really good insight into 2 techniques at quite a deep level. It was very useful for later. But anyway, once you'd dyed up your fabric, then it was steamed. And the steams were like huge saunas, wooden boxes about this high, sort of walk-in with racks, and so you put them all in, close the doors, and someone else would do that. And then afterwards they were scrubbed with brushes to get the rice pest off and washed in the stream, and when you got them back it was just beautiful. So just all lovely and pristine. Sometimes though, for really intense colours, the fabrics would be dyed up to 12 times, and the whole procedure would be repeated, so it had to be steamed and washed between each one so that you return to the silk that, well, we used to say it's back to virgin silk. And for the really expensive kimonos that some of the artists did, after a number of years they would take them back and they would be bleached back and then repainted, because the silk, the fabric, everything about them was so beautiful and expensive that you just, you know, you had them refashioned, I suppose. So towards the end of the year, I had met somebody who is still my husband in Japan. He was living there, he'd been there for 3.5 years, excuse me, from Holland, and he was on a Japanese scholarship, and he said to me, we were close, we were very close. I thought he was really rather wonderful. But he said to me, well, you know, the Japanese government's paid for my scholarship, and would you like to go to Europe? And I said, yeah, sounds like good fun. He said, well, if you marry me, then the Japanese government will pay your trip back. So I said, oh, all right, okay, fair enough. Give it a whirl. So the day before we left, we were married in Tokyo. Well, I think we were married because we had a Japanese, our names had to be put into Japanese. I was sitting over there in the corner. Japanese interpreter was doing all the business work, and we got this Romeo copy of something, which presumably meant that we were married anyway. So we went for, after that, we went for about 3 months or so back through Asia. We went to Singapore, we went to Malaysia, we went to Sri Lanka. The insurgents were racing around and everything was rationed, including sugar, so the substitute was passion fruit jam. Fabulous. We went to Laos, we went to Pakistan, we didn't get to Afghanistan because someone was shot on the border, and then, I can't remember, we went to lots of different places, so I saw a broad range of textiles, and I was just, things were bubbling away. Finally we went back through Syria and through Damascus. And Damascus even then was bombed out all around. But the most beautiful city in snow. And the people there were like people from a Russian fairy story. They were all with those big fur hats and great big coats. People wheeling barrows of citrus through the streets and singing. It was just absolute magic. So we went back to Holland, stayed for another period of time. My husband in the meantime had managed to get a very good PhD scholarship at Canberra University. So we finally, after many months in Holland, came back to Australia, to Canberra, and I thought, now I'm into it, this is going to be my life. I'm a silk painter, so in our little flat, the only way I could do it similar to Japan is I'd always sew my fabric onto a piece of fabric on a rod, so I can just sort of stretch it out like that. I don't use frames or anything. Hook it on the back of the door, stretch it out when Robert left, so no one could come or go until I unhooked my silk. And if it was wet, I wasn't letting anyone in. Wait another half an hour, get the hairdryer. So I did that, and then I thought, heck, how am I going to get it steamed? They don't do that here. Can't send it to get done. So we came up with this way of steaming it in a metal rubbish bin with an immersion heater in the bottom. And I think I did that for about 7 years, just bundling it all up in paper and sticking it in the rubbish bin. But it worked. I had a very lucky, I managed to get some of my first pieces taken by a gallery around Canberra. We drove around, I went to all, showed them my work, and it was quite different then because nobody was doing silk painting. So people were interested. I had my first solo exhibition in Cooma, I think in 78. No, 78, yes. No, that's not right. 76, because I know I'd organised this exhibition, and I was giving birth to my first son in November of 76, and I thought, I have to organise an exhibition because otherwise I will lose focus. So I remember, well, obviously the baby was born, so it must have been very late in 76, because he was there in the bassinet. So it was just a short time after the birth, which wasn't that easy. So that was the start of it all. And then in 78, Robert finished his PhD. We went to Perth, and just briefly. And then I'd been writing to textile artists in Australia, and there was quite a lot of them in Adelaide. And we'd been here once for a holiday, and it was a nice place. So we thought, where are we going to go? Let's just go to Adelaide. off we go. So we came to Adelaide, and it was a really exciting time in textiles here. Fibre Forum, I think, or something was just starting. There was a designers collective, a whole group of textile artists meeting. It was just a fabulous world of textiles, and I got stuck in selling things, making scarves, wall hangings, everything you can do in silk, running workshops. So it was, you know, very, very flat out with young children. I was getting a little bit burnt out, I think. And then early 80s, the very first Craft Australia show in Sydney, and there was a number of artists from Adelaide, went about 7, all very famous now, far more famous than me, but we all went up there, and it was like the start of a whole new world. All these wonderful people. And then probably I'm just going to pick up a couple of really important bits in the textile life. Probably one of the biggest is Sylva Harris, who was with the Festival Theatre at that time, commissioned me to do a piece called Dragon Sneeze. It wasn't called Dragon Sneeze then, but she wanted a touring exhibition that would be for children. So I came with my then, Didier was about 8 or 9. We talked about a story, what could we do, and I came up with this idea about a dragon, because I was doing a lot of dragons at the time. And then gradually started to build up this story, and I was going to paint it, well, I did paint it, on huge panels, 2.7 metres high, and the width of the silk, which was 1.2 or something, and I did over 70 panels in the end. It was very important on two fronts. One, it was wonderful to have that commission. It was wonderful to have the faith that I could do something like that, and really to be given free rein. And secondly, there was one little big catch for me. I hadn't been to art school. I always painted. I simply looked at the silk and drew. That's how I somehow did things. So it came out of my head. I could see it sitting there, so I just refer to this visual image and do what I wanted, and sort of matched up pretty well. When I was working for the Festival Theatre, they wanted to see the drawings. That's a problem with commissions, they'd like to see what they're getting. So, but fortunately Sylva was very good, and she did give me free rein. So what I used to do is I'd paint the panels, and then I'd draw them and take them to her. But gradually I developed some drawing skills, so that was really, really good. That Dragon Sneeze, finally, it first opened in the Space Theatre. It was like a theatre production, and for me it was magic, because the whole thing was set up. There was a maze in there, there was storytellers, because it was all, I would tell, it was interactive, so you sort of made up the story as you went along, and I would tell the story to the storytellers, and there was 4 of them, and they'd pick the kids up in various sections and take them through. Anyway, on the first night it was done, all the kids are outside, whole place is dark, and I was up on the scaffolding thing, and there was a director, and he said, "Lights, action!" And I thought, it's my first show, this is fantastic. It was so exciting. But there were ceilings in some of the rooms, and the lights blew and burnt holes in some of the silk tops, but that was all right. It toured Australia for 6 years, that show, and I went with it to Victorian Art Gallery and to the Opera House. It was going to go to Japan, but it didn't work out, and then one day it was left on the railway siding in pouring rain, and it was in big metal trunks. Sylva spared no expense. It was beautifully packaged, and a forklift punched holes in the trunks, so they filled with water. So its life wasn't actually finished, because we did rescue some panels and do something else, but that was that one. And then a year after that, the then Australia Council and Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade had a batik touring exhibition for Southeast Asia, and I was invited to represent South Australia. It's about 7 of us, and in fact James Bennett, who's now the curator of Asian textiles here in this gallery, was one of the other exhibitors in that exhibition. I can't remember which state he was representing, but anyway, I got the opportunity to go with the exhibition to Indonesia. So Coles to Newcastle really, but I did go, I toured and did workshops and lectured over in Indonesia. Fabulous time, met lots of artists, it was really wonderful. And then a couple of years after that, I was a year artist in residence with the Migration Museum and developed another show, Work It Out, which toured Australia for 4 years. And that was more sort of multicultural, which is where things were going. So then there was a whole period of time where I was mixing and matching, doing public art, glass panels, this, that and the other, lots of things with my wonderful family in Arts Eccentrics that I've been with for 27 years or something like that. I'm now co-artistic director of. And then just big jump to about 2009. My son was living in Buenos Aires. He's a Brazilian, a South America file, I suppose you would say. He speaks Portuguese and Spanish, and he just loves that area. And at that particular time, he thought he would bring in import handbags to Australia. And I thought, surely he needs his mother to help him select handbags. So I will go to Buenos Aires. And then a week before I went, he rang me up and said, Mum, could you design ties, woven ties? I thought, well, not really. Why? You know, he couldn't find the right ties, so, would I do this? So I thought, oh well, okay, I'll give it a go. So I went over to Buenos Aires, and this is where the ties started. Now, this is just bear this in mind. I'd broken my foot a year before. One of the ankles was playing up, so I was bandaging that up. Like when I got to Buenos Aires, some days I'd get up in the morning and I'd bandage up my foot, and then I'd be walking out in the street and I'd think, hang on, that's the other foot. This was the foot that was broken. But so just bear that in mind. This is where the ill health and serendipity comes into it. So Ramon said, look, I don't know how, weaving's not my thing, I don't know anything about this. He said, oh, you just design it, I'll sort that, I'll find something, I'll work it out. I had no idea. I cut pieces of paper tie-shaped and imagined what I'd do. But my son is incredibly, I don't know, gung-ho. He's very, very pushy. And I did come up with some designs, and then we started interacting with the places that could weave. And I very, very quickly learned all the incredible work and details that is important to get a finished woven piece, and how so the beauty of silk, of course, is that when the light hits it, you get all this lovely colour variation. The thing with ties is that the maximum space you can get for a repeat is 20 centimetres. So I like to get lots in my pictures, and that was quite tricky. I had to sort all sorts of things. The other thing is that you can only have about a maximum of 4 colours, because it's the fibres are carried through, the threads are carried all the way through. So if you get more, it's too thick. But excuse me, and of course every colour interacts with every other one. So it's a real, for me, I just try to work it out in my mind, look at the colour threads and think, if that's mixed with that and that, it's going to look like that, and try and get the most happening for the best value. So it was very, very sort of difficult. Anyway, I did come up with some designs in Buenos Aires, and then when I came back to Australia, I was quite exhausted, and usually I work really big, and I'm thinking, this, it's so detailed, it takes such a lot of time, I'm going to work out the repeat and all that sort of stuff. However, by this stage, when I got back, I could hardly walk. I could hardly lift my arms. And I went to the doctor and they said, well, you've got rheumatoid arthritis. But amazingly, I didn't have it in my hands. So you would never have managed to make me sit down for that period of time. But for about 2 years, I could just sit at my desk and work away on these tiny, tiny designs. And really, that's how this has come about. And besides that, it was fantastic for my drawing as well. So instead of big work, I was focusing, getting into the detail. And last step, well, not last step, because every time I get so inspired with so many different possibilities and textiles and texture and all sorts of things. But my very most recent work, which you can see hanging over there behind the counter, and these, which are sort of hanging shawl things with the printed silk on the front, the fabric that I designed for my ties, the woven fabric, and kimono silk at the back. I feel like they're a sort of a combination of so many things. And what I've done with these is I've drawn in coloured pencil and inks, which are quite like the dyes that I've used, but it's allowed me to get incredible detail. And then I've had that printed onto silk and then mixed it with my woven and then the plain jacquard silks. So I'm really pleased with these, and I'm now so excited with, I'm drawing and drawing and drawing, which is quite a miracle given that I didn't have any sort of training, but I find I love it, and every change in what happens to me influences the way I work, but it doesn't, it's not a hold back thing, it's a wonderful thing. Always so many more opportunities. So that's about where I am today. I probably missed out lots, but does anyone want to ask me any questions? Yes?
You were talking about the work you did in Japan, and you said you did all that.